Got an incident report from North Carolina's Board of Election, actually multiple incident reports. Students in New Hanover claim they're being harassed by walking from class to a voting site. The state board and its local enforcement partners are monitoring several incidents of possible voter or poll worker harassment or intimidation, according to board spokesperson Pat Gannon. This is, as I said, in North Carolina. Quote, we did have a situation in another county where a one-stop worker was followed from the voting site to the elections office and then followed to their home, said the board's executive director, Karen Brinson Bell. This is possibly the most egregious situation that we've had at this point in time, but none of this is okay. We want civility. We want people to be able to cast their ballot without fear of intimidation or interference. Voters in Wake, this is a town apparently, say they were photographed while waiting to cast ballots, the board said, and electioneers in Harnett allegedly recorded video of voters outside polling stations. These are, naked attempts at voter intimidation in largely Democratic areas. Over at gregpalace.com, the Kemp deputized GOP vigilantes to challenge 149,000 Georgia voters. He tells the story of Major Gamaliel Turner, who, was transferred to an Air Force base in California. But he's on federal property, and he's still a resident of Georgia legally, and he still votes in Georgia. But he, along with 149,168 other Georgia voters, have had their votes basically taken away from them by people using Brian Kemp's new law, SB 202, I believe it's called, that allows anybody to basically challenge a voter. And they are doing these mass challenges to black voters in Georgia. Down in Florida, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill in April to create his election police. In August, deputies arrested 20 Floridians for allegedly voting illegally, 15 of them, unsurprisingly, black. This 47-page law has a slew of other rules where if you slip up in the way that you vote, in the way that you cast your vote, in the way that you help other people to vote, or even get registered to vote, you can end up in jail. LaVon Bracey, the director of democracy for religious nonprofit agency Faith in Florida, which encourages civic participation, tells the Washington Post, quote, I have been one who has collected hundreds of ballots, all legitimate ballots, to help persons and make it convenient for them to vote. Now I'm getting calls from people saying, Ms. Bracey, can you come get my ballot? I can't get out of the house. I'm disabled. I'm saying, sorry, no, I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to risk getting a police record. DeSantis has deemed this activity ballot harvesting, and his law makes it a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. If your neighbor is disabled and you carry her ballot to the polling station and say, here, you go to jail for 5 years now in Florida. Also, if a third-party group says to people, hey, if you're having a hard time getting to the polls or you can't stand in line for 5 hours because you've got severe arthritis or you've got to get back to work, we'll take your ballot in for you. Those groups, these third-party groups, are looking at fines of up to $50,000. The number of people who have registered to vote through these third-party groups went from 96,000 2 years ago to 31,000 this year. And you'll recall, 4 years ago, it was hundreds of thousands. Stacey Abrams was signing up people all over the state to vote. Brian Kemp has made that illegal. Tell me Republicans want people to vote? Meanwhile, Politico is, this is the Tennessee vote. Meanwhile, Leola Scott recently decided to become a more active citizen in Tennessee. In August, she tried to register to vote. That's when she learned that she's not allowed to cast a ballot because 20 years ago, she was convicted of a nonviolent felony. 1 in 5 black Tennesseans are like Scott, barred from voting because of a prior felony conviction. This over at ProPublica.com. 21% of black people in Tennessee are ineligible to vote because of these mostly minor felony convictions. Many of them, most of them, in fact, did not even result in jail time, but they take you off the voting rolls, which is why the police in these, this goes back to Jim Crow. This goes back to the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, when these laws were put on the books. I mean, prior to the Civil War, black people in the South couldn't vote at all, period. When they got the vote in the 1860s, In the 1870s, the southern states started putting laws on the books saying felons can't vote, and then they started arresting black people for any little thing that they could make into a felony, including third-degree felonies. In some states, you know, that includes, well, I don't have a list of the specifics, so I'm not gonna finish that. I need to do a little more research on that. But Mississippi ranks distant second. 21% of black people in Tennessee have been arrested and convicted of a felony. Mississippi is a second with 16% of its black voting eligible population unable to vote. Tennessee has the highest rate of disenfranchisement among its Latino community, just over 8%. This goes back to the whole thing about, you know, if you're white, your car doesn't get stopped. If you're black, it does. Why? To maintain the power structure in the state.